This is Secret Recipes, and though it's one sweet treat of a game, it's no piece of cake to win. This is a newer game that I came across that I thought was so neat I had to take a look. This was released by ThinkPsych in 2024 and designed by Dan Fisher. So let's dive right in, starting with the box art. First off, I really like this whimsical font that they chose for the titling. I like the little whisk, the cake, and the chef's hat there. All the happy little ingredients floating around, the little chef and his cake. It definitely establishes the theme very nicely. This game takes 30 to 45 minutes to play. It's for ages 9+ and intended for 2 to 5 players. Very clearly displayed on the front. When we flip it over, we have some pretty standard board game fare. Photos and representations of what's actually in the box as far as cards and player cards, that sort of thing. We've also got a little blurb of what the game is all about and the general theme. Now, this is a lift-off top box. Here we go. Very tight tolerances, so it feels very nice. It does have a nice little card organizer. I wish that it had some sort of separator right here, because when you're storing the main decks required, it's very easy for them to intermingle if the box gets shaken up. But for the most part, it's kept everything very neat, and it's nice to see really any organizer at all in games these days. So win for that. There we go. So very nice box that ThinkPsych delivers the game in. And I want to point out too, that it came with some Ziploc packaging for the small tokens. So the tokens, I just punched these out of a little piece of tag board. Also, the player cards have these little plastic standees to hold them up as well. And the game actually came with a couple little Ziploc bags that were empty when I opened it, but were clearly for storage of these small parts. So again, very nice on ThinkPsych's part for giving you Ziploc bags too. You don't need to supply your own. So the packaging on this game is really nice. A+ for that, very much like it. Now, let's move on to the game itself. Secret Recipes is a sweet game of subterfuge centered around baking delicious cakes. Gameplay revolves around 3 primary decks of cards: the ingredient deck, the cupcake recipe deck, and the cake recipe deck. Players will race to try to complete as many recipes as they can before the end of the game. Recipes are lists of ingredients that players will need to collect the corresponding cards to in order to collect the cake points. Now, the player with the most cake points at the end of the game wins. The basics of the gameplay are as follows. Each player will be dealt 7 ingredient cards. I have a little sample hand in front of you so you can see right there. You'll get 7 random ingredient cards and 1 cake recipe card to start the game. You'll also get one of these little reference cards here. This shows you what the 3 main phases of each player's turn is: the action phase, the play phase, and the discard phase, as well as gives you a quick visual reference for all of the associated icons for all the different ingredients. Now, their names are printed very clearly on the cards, but this is a nice little helper, and actually, when you're new to the game, having something to help you keep track of what you're supposed to do on your turn is very nice. Now, you can see here I have a few other pieces. These are character cards. We'll get to these in a moment. These are actually neat little modifiers for more advanced play. But right now, let's talk about the basics of the game. Now, at this point in the game, you will see your cards, but you'll want to keep those secret from me, hence the name, Secret Recipes. Players will go around the table and they'll play each of their turns. Now, the first phase is the action phase. And me as the player, I can take one of 3 actions. I can choose to draw a cake recipe or cupcake recipe, so I have something new to collect for. For instance, cupcake recipes require fewer ingredients, so I can get a quick 1 or 2 points by playing 2 cards and quickly reduce the number of cards in my hand, which is good because I'm limited to a maximum of 10 by the end of my turn. Now, the other action I can take is the deep dive into the pantry, where I get to draw 2 cards from the ingredient deck, pick the one that I want, add that to my hand, and take the one that I don't want and add that to the face-up pantry. Now, occasionally I run the risk of getting an action card. And this action card, for example, is called Spring Cleaning, where you lose all of the cards in the face-up pantry. This hurts pretty much every player at the table because the face-up pantry is a pantry that you can draw from if you want to draw a card. Now, another option to get ingredients is to ask other players at the table if they have an ingredient in their hand that I want. Let's say I ask you if you have yellow sprinkles. You have a yellow sprinkle card right there, so you have to give it to me. But say you didn't have yellow sprinkles, you could tell me to go dig in the pantry, and I either draw one card from the top of the ingredient deck, or I can choose a face-up card. So what's interesting is, let's say I have a recipe where I need 2 ingredients, and I want to see if you have one, but I know this is one I need. I can hedge my bet by asking you if you have the second ingredient. If you say no, at least I know I have one that I need to complete my recipe with. Now, the play phase, the second phase of a player's turn. This is where keeping your recipes secret is very important. You see, if I play a recipe and I don't have all of the ingredients, that recipe stays on the table through all of the other players' turns until it comes back to me. So let's say I don't want to discard too many of my ingredient cards because I'm limited to 10, but I want to try to complete this recipe. I may play it with only 2 ingredients. So in this instance, I have chocolate cake and brownie, and I'll take these little markers that I have and mark off the ingredients, and then I can stack the cards so that I'm not taking up too much space on the table. Now all the players know which cards are required to complete that recipe. Here's the catch. Any player can complete that recipe on their turn and claim those points. So I really want to be strategic about which recipes I lay down and which ingredients I play. Now, let's figure I actually have the appropriate hand to fill out all of the ingredients. Well, that means that I get to empty these markers into my pile and and keep this recipe as a scorekeeper. So I just got 4 points. Any ingredients that I spent on that recipe go into the trash pile. At this point, I don't have any other cards to play towards another recipe, so my turn is over and play moves to the next person in line. Now, let's say I had drawn cards but not played a recipe, and now I have 11 or 12 cards in my hand. I would enter the third phase of my turn before play passes on to the next player, and that would be the discard phase. At that point, I discard any additional ingredients that I have into the face-up pantry and bring my hand down to 10. So again, you can see where over time the face-up pantry will fill up with ingredients that other players can identify, making the deep dive into the pantry a sort of risk-reward system in case you don't see anything listed that you want. And it also adds that certain level of risk-reward to asking go fish style if other players have ingredients that you need. Also, the subterfuge comes in with the fact that since every player can claim any recipe that's on the table, you really need to be careful about your timing when you're playing your recipe. How you determine the end of the game is simple. The first player to reach 12 signifies the game's last round. The game will then progress for one more turn for each player to finish out any hands that they might possibly complete, and all of their cake points are tallied. The player with the most points wins. In the event of a tie, the player with the highest point cake wins. In the event of a tie in that situation, the player with the most full cakes versus cupcakes wins. So there's no true deadlock. There's always a way to determine a winner. Now we can get to these character cards. Once you've mastered the basics of gameplay and how to complete recipes and gain your cake points, it's recommended to start your second game by selecting a character. Now this is kind of cool. The dealer, when they deal the cards, will randomly shuffle these thicker playing cards and toss you 2. Then you get to choose which one of these that you want. So for instance, I have Wild Willy Whoopie Snapper, and his special ability is he gets one of these Wild Willy wild ingredient cards that can be played in lieu of any other ingredient throughout the game. Or I can get Penny, I always get this one, Peppykins. I want to say Preppykins for some reason, but it's Penny Peppykins, and she always has peppermint. So whether or not I have a peppermint chip ingredient card, I always have peppermint if I'm playing as her character. So these extra little boons that you get from having a character, and like some of them are also so powerful that they're limited, so you have to use these counters. So they're only allowed to use their bonus twice per game, and you have to keep track. So that's what these little counters and pieces here are for. And a good example of that would be Benny the Bountiful. So his ability is 2 times per game. You may keep both ingredient cards when you use the deep dive pantry. Well, that's pretty good. You can accrue ingredients really quickly with that one. Like I said, because it can be difficult to keep track of what everybody's buffs are when they have a character, it's advised that you start your first game without characters and then add them into play to spice things up. Now, let's have a look at the rule book, which this is awesome. This is a very well-made, full color copy, sealed paper, saddle stitched booklet. I mean, very easy to read. A lot of my computer programs and apps, I like to run in night mode, so dark background, white print. So I really like that they have this set up here, but very thorough instructions, a very nicely made booklet. So this will definitely stand the test of time. And I also noticed this little write-up right here on the back that I want to take a second and read, because this is a fine example of why I like this game and its gameplay mechanics so much. So this is a message from ThinkPsych, and they say this is about ThinkPsych and why we published Secret Recipes. ThinkPsych is a company founded by 2 psychologists. We published Secret Recipes first and foremost because it's a fun game we love playing with our friends and family. Additionally, we were excited about its educational value for promoting social awareness and building emotional resilience. Winning the game requires you to observe and remember what other people are doing, rather than just focusing on yourself. Secret Recipes also challenges you with some skills we know a lot of people struggle with: frustration tolerance, not getting what you want, having things taken from you, plans changing, losing, and problem solving. Through play, we strive for our games to help develop social and emotional health for all ages. Thank you all to the people who play tested and gave their thoughts and feedback to the many iterations of what eventually became Secret Recipes. That's a great message. I love all the thought that went into this, because they're absolutely right. I discussed this a little bit when I did my review of Candyland, that I thought it was necessary for the game to have the setbacks built into it to help kids learn how to overcome setbacks in life. And they so succinctly stated it just right on the back here, how all of the different gameplay mechanics give you a certain level of control and strategy, but require you to exercise some very interesting skills in order to be successful. I gotta say, after having play tested this, now I haven't done more than 2 players, but I very much enjoyed my 2-player game time. Actually, the opponent I play tested with was the first one to want to immediately set this game up and play it again the next night. So I know it's a hit. It's a lot of fun. The quality of parts are great. I mean, it doesn't require much. You have this little cardboard base. You have these little cardboard counters here. All of the art is really nice, albeit relatively simplistic. It doesn't need to be complicated. All of the little ingredient cards are very bright. I like the little characters. Everything has like a little smiley face, even the brownie. It's a lot of fun. So I highly recommend Secret Recipes. I actually have a link in my description if you want to get yourself a copy, but this was a blast. This was a very interesting treat. I don't normally check out very many modern games. I'm usually comparing modern games to their original counterparts, or at least vintage counterparts, to see what's changed throughout the years. But every once in a while, I encounter something where the gameplay was great and I really like the message behind the game. So this is one I wholeheartedly endorse. Secret Recipes, it's a lot of fun. Again, definitely go for ages 9+ if you're explaining that rule set. Some of the younger ones might be a little caught off guard, but this is an excellent game for the family. Definitely check it out. thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.